So now moving on to Formula One.
Ooh, boy.
So I only saw the start
Mm-hmm.
and I saw the last 10 laps because I was at work.
Yes.
And like they started the race at like 9, which is when my work officially like we
Opens,
open up
yeah.
to the public. So I was like, I have to use the restroom, guys. And then I was like watching it on my phone. I was just like, let me just see the start real quick. Right?
Yeah, no, of course.
And then later on, when I took my break, this wasn't timed. It was just a good timing. I get a 15-minute break, so I was able to see the last 10 laps of the race, which 10 laps is more than 15 minutes. So don't tell my boss. I don't think she cares. But yeah, so I will say you're going to fill in the gaps. The race was definitely, without a doubt, more interesting than Bahrain.
Oh, 100%.
Because
yes.
we also like had a safety car and stuff like that. I will say once again, though, I thought that the start was a little underwhelming.
Yeah, I mean, it's always, I feel like part of it is a relief that nobody knocks out immediately.
And
I mean,
that's not what I want. I just want someone, like, I'm waiting for someone to, like, jump. Like, and then just, like, catch, like, 3 racers off and, like, jump a bunch of positions or, like, create something, you know? I don't want anyone to, like, get into an accident. But it just seems like they just all stay in their own, you know, position.
Yeah, no, I hear that. I mean, we did have some action right from the beginning, like warm-up lap. Gasly is like, oh, there's some trouble with the gearbox.
Yeah, but talking about Gasly before you move on from that. So his 6th gear, he couldn't shift into that. But apparently he said in a post-race interview, he said that actually after qualifying, because he didn't make it into qualifying 2, they already found that there was already damage on the car. So he already had damage going into qualifying, which also makes me a little bit concerned that why did no one know about this?
Yeah, I don't know.
I don't know. Maybe he picked it up during qualifying, but I guess that impacted his racing. And then it's just so unfortunate that he didn't. You don't even get to do 1 lap.
No laps. Like he did a warm-up lap, and then it was immediately on.
And then you have to now wait 2 weeks. Oh, what a bummer, man.
Yes. I mean, it was an interesting race. Obviously not with Max in the front. He raced his own race. We didn't really see him. It was a fun beginning with Leclerc because he defended his position at the beginning against Perez, and I love that he like fought it. You know, I felt like I saw some really like fight in him, which was really nice.
Yeah, absolutely.
So he did fight for it at the beginning, but then I mean the Red Bull is still so much faster. So he eventually was passed by him, but we didn't really see much of Max, Sergio, or Charles for majority of the race because there was not much to see because they were driving their own race. There was some gap between all of 3. They were not competing with each other even. The 3 of them were in their own world essentially for majority of the race, but there was still some action that happened. Of course, we had Lance go out in the first couple of laps. Because he DNF'd, he clipped the wall, then ran into the other wall, and it was this whole thing where he said over the radio, I hit the wall, and then his engineer was like, oh, can you bring it back? And he's like, no, I'm in the wall.
Yeah.
Which is funny to hear, but the commentators were even saying that it's like the engineers might not have seen the screen. They're looking at all the other screens that they have. So I get it, but it's just still funny.
I will say this, like in my mind, it's like, why isn't that all the screens flashing red? That there's something wrong with the car. But also, this is not the first time we've seen this in F1 where someone's like, oh, can you bring it back? And then and I think then like the driver's like, no. And then the race engineer probably sees like, oh, this is, you know, what happened or whatever. So this is not the first time it's happened. I will say I was very glad to see right away that he didn't hurt his hand.
I know.
I was a little worried about it because like last year before at the beginning of the season, he broke his hand.
Yes.
And he ended up having surgery. He did participate in all races, I believe. He didn't skip one.
I don't remember if he skipped the first one or if
I don't
he started
think so.
immediately.
I think he started immediately.
Also, Daniel Ricciardo, he went into the wall right into his first race and he hurt his hand. So there's easily something could be injured when they bump into a wall, especially at like those street circuits where there's not a lot of runoff.
Well, I think it's a snapping of the steering wheel.
Oh yeah.
That but yeah, he was holding it tight. When I was watching the replay, I saw it, but I was like, that was I was glad to see that he was, you know, safe.
Yes,
you know?
But that definitely bunched the crowds back together a little bit, which caused a very long DRS strain with the midfield, which was interesting. There was a lot of exciting or some exciting back and forth between Hamilton and Piastri for a while, which was cool to see because Hamilton and Lando didn't pit.
Yes, during the safety car.
Exactly. And Joe also didn't pit. I think those three were the main ones that didn't pit. So they were a little bit on a different strategy. They were hoping maybe for another safety car so they can pit a little bit later, which is smart. It's very likely for a street race, especially in Jeddah, because it is such an intricate track. It didn't work out for them, but there was a lot of great action happening with Magnussen, Albon, Ocon. There's a lot of back and forth. Unfortunately, I mean, Magnussen definitely got screwed over.
So before we get into that, I will say, though, both Hamilton and Norris said in their post-race interview that they were happy that they tried the different or they offset the strategy because, first of all, it gives you also more insight into the car and try different data and see what it works.
Yes.
So I'm glad to see that both of them were like, I'm okay with trying it because right now all we're trying to do is get faster.
Yeah.
Because it's like I saw a statistic that I think the Mercedes now is more off pace at the beginning of the season than it was last year, and sometimes I'm like how does it happen that the car gets worse, or is like everyone getting better and they're not? Like, I don't get it. Like, I understand that there's a cost gap and they can't just throw money at it, but it seems like you were doing better and now it's worse again, and it's the same thing for McLaren. Like, you're not competing right now with the top guys.
And then, like you said, even we talked about it, like Mercedes now is faster in the straights, but then McLaren is in like the corners and stuff, so that's why it was so difficult for Piastri to pass Hamilton at
and
one
vice
point,
versa,
and vice versa, because they kind of balance each other out in this track in particular.
So the Mercedes is fast on the straights and then the lower and mid corners, and then in the high or the high speed corners, that's when the McLaren really shines. Probably also in the mid ones.
Yeah.
So it kind of offsets, but it is so that's why Piastri wasn't really able to make a move. He was behind Hamilton for like 20 laps.
Exactly,
I think he tried to do
I mean,
overtake.
He really tried. We saw it, and then he had DRS every single time. But even with DRS, the Mercedes was just so fast. Like, he got closer, but there was really a moment for him to really have the opportunity to pass. And Piastri's a good driver. Yeah, he would risk it. I mean, not risk it, but like try it, and also in smart ways.
To be fair, he did make some mistakes, so he ended up going deep. So that's why he was never able to make it stick. But then also that ended up not being able Hamilton to overtake Norris later at the end because like he wasn't fast enough to catch him. He did ended up getting DRS, but because in the high speeds corner the McLaren just takes off. There was just no contention, which, like, it's fair, but it's just unfortunate, but that both cars are not where they need to be.
No, I mean, it's definitely, I feel like right now it's Red Bull, its own world, then there's Ferrari, and then Mercedes and McLaren are competing with each other at the moment, and then it's Aston, and then...
Well, the Astons this time actually were a little bit better than the other two.
Well, yeah, but I mean, I feel like still they're... it's not quite sure yet where they are. Yeah. Even Fernando was saying, like, he was nervous about going into the full race. Like, he has quali speed, but for the full race, he's not certain quite yet. Yeah. But then, so let's talk about Magnussen. I felt like, and I think many feel like he was screwed over. Like, the penalties that he got, yeah, sure, maybe because he cost some, he pushed Albon a little bit into the wall. Albon did say he felt like it was like a racing incident, so he wasn't like hurt about it because neither of them DNF'd or were out of the race. Both were able to continue without even adding a stop. So he got a 10-second penalty for that, and then he ended up overtaking Yuki at one point, and then he went wide or cut the corner, and then he got another 10-second penalty.
So I would probably say the first one was pretty intense, but the second one, I rewatched the footage, and essentially Yuki's coming around and he's really going deep, and so he's not making that corner, and then he just stayed in front of Yuki. So I do agree that, like, you technically have to make the overtake, and then if you go the next corner, you go wide, and then it's fine. But because you overtook that same corner, I get that.
But I feel like 10-second penalties, I feel like those are very harsh, because even they were talking about it after the race that, yes, you could give a penalty for both instances, but the precedent is to give 5-second penalties, not 10-second penalties.
Yeah, I was surprised about that too. I thought I think my thing is because then what Magnussen did, right, is he ended up just holding up the back end of the...
Which was so great.
Like, he played the team game, and then Nico also thanked him for it because Nico was able to come in 10th.
Yeah, and got a point.
Exactly. They were talking about essentially, like, they are just waiting for one of the top 5 teams, someone to DNF.
Yeah.
And that gives them the opportunity to sneak in and get a point, which is really actually sad. It's
that
unfortunate.
There's no other chance for them to get a point unless, one of the top 5 teams DNFs. Yeah.
Exactly. And then, but I also understand because some people were saying like, oh, that's not cool and whatever. But like Magnussen is doing exactly what is expected of him, of the team, and he's doing the right thing, right? Because the thing about it is also, I always sometimes don't agree with the F1 or the FIA penalties, because it's like people get penalized, for example, after qualifying for doing something during qualifying, but like for example Bottas, right, he ended up getting held up. 2 cars were on the ideal racing line when he was in Q1, and then he ended up missing Q2 by like 0.0029 or something like that, so by a minimal fraction, because he had to go around those cars. And they ended up getting, I think if they got a penalty, it was afterwards. But it's like the driver who was already hindered already is facing the consequences. So that punishment needs to come sooner. And if the punishments are just like, hey, I'm going to give you a 10-second penalty, this guy already has a 10-second penalty. So he has a 20-second. He's not going to care about his race. So he's going to do whatever he needs to do. So if you want, either you need to change up the penalties, the way that you're applying them, or you're just going to be like, okay, if the team or the racers want to handle it like that, then that's their prerogative.
Yeah, I mean, I still think that the punishment was very harsh. Good on Magnussen for playing the team game and fighting and really helping Nico and Haas to earn a point, because that's so much worth nowadays for those teams.
Especially because it's lots and lots of money that's on the line too.
For sure. And I agree with what you're saying, that like if somebody has a 10-second penalty, like what does another 10-second penalty do? So maybe then they would have to do like a drive-through penalty, because that could cause a little bit more... because then they can't play the team game maybe necessarily. Yeah,
and that's the thing, right? Like he's like, I'm not gonna give back the position to Yuki because I'm gonna get penalized, but my race is already shot, right?
Yes.
So if you want to prevent this type of thought process, then you need to change the way the penalty is applied.
Yes.
I will say also, however, really good on Yuki, because he actually said, he was like, yes, I was overtaken, and he was kind of like off the stuff like that, but he was also like, in the end, it was also on me for not, first of all, giving him the opportunity to overtake or make that move, and then also not being able to overtake him again. I mean, to be fair, also that track is quite difficult to make passes on. They don't have like the best cars anyways, right?
Yeah.
But it's good on Yuki for him to like, realize, it was also on me. If I'm gonna let a guy pass me, then I need to overtake him and not let him hold up the whole race,
For sure. But before we move on, we have one more big thing to talk about for F1. As you guys probably already know, Carlos Sainz ended up not competing this weekend because he had to get his appendix removed, which is crazy. It's the second time now since we've really gotten into F1 again that we've had this. Albon had his appendix removed within the last
2022
couple of seasons. Yeah, and then now Carlos Sainz. So then, of course, they had to find a last-minute replacement for him, and then they ended up bringing on Oliver Bearman from he's an F2 driver currently. He was an F3 champion previously, and it's only his second season in F2. He did get pole for his main event race, however,
in F2,
but then he got called up to the big guys, and so he couldn't compete in F2 this weekend, which makes of course sense. So he first got into the car in FP3, which for just barely an hour, and then he had to go straight into qualifying. He did really well in qualifying. I mean, I can't imagine the pressure or what goes through somebody's mind, and also the physical task to take up a F1 car all of a sudden. Like, yes, of course he's fit because he already races F2 and he's preparing to be eventually F1, but it happened probably much sooner than expected. Like, okay, he did drive a Haas F1 car twice last year, during FP1, which is so he has some experience, but still like unprepared going into it. Qualifying, he did really well. He made it into Q2, almost kicking out Hamilton to make it into Q3. So it was really close, very good on him for being that good with only like an hour in the car prior to it. Then during the race, he did so well. He did get them, I think he had the soft tires to start with. Yeah, he was one of the few people on the soft tires because his team wanted to give him a little bit more speed right from the beginning to make the start a little bit easier on him. So he had a good start. It was, like you said, there was not much that happened in the start. There was no accidents or anything, which was nice. So he did really well, and he ended up in 7th place.
Yeah, he did really amazing.
Rookie race.
Absolutely. And it's awesome.
With points, I mean, yeah, absolutely incredible. He did really well. I mean, it must have been so exhausting. He was also talking about, like, of course, that his shoulders and back and stuff is hurting. Of course, the seat was made for him.
No, because it's also so last minute. It's not like you had a chance to maybe get a seat done. I don't know how they usually handle it.
I don't know either, but it was just like, how impressive.
But it's nice to see someone come to F1, especially because we don't have a rookie this year, and also do really well, and then hopefully potentially get a seat in a couple of years, you know?
Yeah. Not only that, but I'm hoping that will maybe open the eyes to some of the teams and give rookies opportunities. Because,
Absolutely.
I mean, he did excellent. Like, yes, of course, it's not every rookie that can do that well. And he's, I think, only the 3rd teenager to earn points in a Grand Prix. Which is also, like, it's kind of crazy. But, I mean, yeah, hats off to him. I also love to see the relationship between him and his father, which was so cute, how supportive the dad was, how, I mean, internet famous the dad now is just because he was so passionate and in it and worried and so cute. And then afterwards, how they, like, hugged each other and a little kiss on the cheek, which was so cute. I mean, they just have this, it seems like, very beautiful relationship. And even the dad said, like, don't worry, just enjoy it. And Vasseur said, just like, bring it home.
Yeah, like, don't be a hero. Like, no one is expecting you to win. No one is expecting you to fight for a podium. But, you know, bring the car back in one piece and hopefully make some points in the Constructors' Championship. And he accomplished both. He had an incident-free race. You know,
and he did some overtaking. He battled Nico for a while, and then he was able to pass him eventually, which was also cool to see. He did say he got caught up behind Nico a little bit longer than he wanted to, but Nico has experience.
Yeah,
like,
of course.
Yes, he drives a Haas, but he knows how to defend. And
of course, and you still have to make the pass. You know, yes, he's in a Ferrari.
Yes,
he's in a better car, much faster car, and stuff like that. But in the end, you still have to make the overtake, and he ended up doing that.
Yes.
So that's really awesome. And, you know, once again, it's just really cool to see a rookie come in and do well. I know we had that before. We had Liam last year come in, and he did really well. And I'm really hoping that maybe next year we'll get to see maybe 2 rookies on the track, on the track, on the grid. I know it will be unfortunate because, of course, if there's new people coming, that means people need to leave too.
I know, and I don't even know who we should say goodbye to.
You know, like, don't. I'm glad I'm not in the decision.
No, for sure. I do want to say, and I told you this because I watched the post-race interviews because I always think you can get some insight from them as well. And then, of course, they interviewed Ollie Bearman and also some of the other drivers, of course, Charles as well, about Ollie. And then there's Jack Donahue there, the Alpine reserve driver, and of course, he's hoping for an F1 seat, and everybody's talking Ollie up and like, oh, he's going to be an F1 sooner than later. And then Jack is just standing there. I mean, he was a good sport and he asked questions and he does such a great job in the interviews. But I was just like, guys, he also wants a seat. And we know that there's only very few available. Like, a lot of the drivers who are in F2 never get to drive an F1 car because they don't get the opportunity. Not. I mean, there's only 20.
Yeah.
So, I mean, for now, hopefully we'll have more. I mean, soon we'll have 22 and stuff, but I mean, there's not going to be.
You think so?
Maybe. I don't know. Who knows? Could be.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sorry you said it with such certainty and was like, oh, you got Andretti news?
I mean, I feel like we'll maybe have 22 eventually, but I don't think it will go much higher than that because also, I mean, the cars are so big. You have to consider the tracks, the pit lanes.
I mean,
and
that's
all those
what they're
things.
saying.
That's what they say. Yeah.
Because the FIA says yes, F1 says no. I don't know. I'm like, more people, more racing, more people on the track. Let's do it.
And more constructors. Like, give it,
And I mean, I would love to also get a constructor to, that is also more competitive,
Yeah.
Nothing against the 5 teams that are not competitive, right?
Yes.
But I'm hoping maybe with Audi coming in that, the Kick Sauber team will become more competitive. I don't know. I'm just like, I want more competition.
But I also like what you said yesterday, because we talked about it, of course, a little bit after the race, that you said you would be interested in having maybe the top 15 teams earning points.
Yes, I was just saying this because I thought it was very like sobering to think about that. The only way the non-top 5 teams can get points is if one of the top 5 teams DNFs, right? And it's just really,
or has a unlucky race, or for whatever other reason.
Yeah, there's something going on so that they're not able to compete at. But it's unfortunate that that's the only way they can do it,
because there's so much competition between those 5 teams also. So it's like they would deserve it.
It's very unusual, but I was saying it would have. I mean, I'm not saying don't do it right now. Maybe also with the regulation changes, because obviously the teams are now, especially the smaller teams, are not going to spend a lot of money on the cars and stuff like that. But I know, like in MotoGP and stuff like that, you can get points all the way until 15th place. I don't know. I think maybe F1 did it at some point, and I'm not saying just switch it up, but it's just like, it would be nice if it, to make it maybe a little bit more competitive, and that's not just the top 10, the same riders or drivers all the time.
Oh, I agree. But so we talked about our rookie, Ollie Bearman, and what an amazing job that he did. But of course, he came from F2, and we told you guys last week, and F2 has been so exciting. Highly recommended. I mean, we didn't get to watch the sprint race this weekend, but we watched the main event this weekend, and my gosh.
I mean, in F2,
much exciting.
Yes, I'm sure maybe in
How
F.
much exciting?
How much exciting? How much exciting? But I'm sure also like in F3, I'm sure it was exciting. But we watched the F2, and then later on we'll talk about F1 Academy as well. An incredibly eventful races. You had everything from, of course, DNFs to safety cars to lots and lots of overtaking. There's so much overtaking going all the time. They're constantly battling. Of course, having those safety cars come in, of course, bunches up the field again. But even so, there's so much overtaking going on at all times. The interesting thing is now also Bearman has points in Formula 1. He doesn't have any points in Formula 2.
That's true, because his first race in Bahrain was not quite as, he didn't go quite as well. But
then this time he got onto the pole, but he wasn't able to, compete, obviously, because he was busy racing racing in F1. I will say, though, and it stayed eventful all the way up until the last lap.
Yeah, we had no idea who was gonna. I mean, I didn't anticipate Fittipaldi. Enzo Fittipaldi ended up winning it. I mean, also great for him, because he said he's been through a tough time. They lost his uncle recently, also Formula F1 driver. Yeah, exactly. So it was like a beautiful thing for him to win, but he was not in the front for the majority of the race. Like, he was in the top group, but at first we had like Miney, of course, he started on first. He ended up trying to compete up there. Crawford and Cordell were up there for a minute. There was a lot of changing. People were also on different strategies, because you do have to pit once or change tire compound once, at least during those 28 laps even. But there was lots of movement.
There was also, because there was multiple safety cars, there was also like, I think teams were also kind of like, oh, when should we make when should we, because
it's strategy.
Exactly. They were trying to figure it out, because was it Correa, right, who came on 14th? He was in the front for a while. He led the race, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Because his team was like, okay, just don't come into the pits. Don't come into the pits. And then he was in first place, and for a while he was leading the race, but then there was no more safety car, and so he ended up having to pit. He ended up coming 14th. But it's like, it was very, very interesting. And then Fittipaldi, his overtake to get into first place was absolutely insane. It was one of the best overtakes I've seen probably this year.
That one was really good. And then also the race for third, Hauger came out of nowhere. He was in the front group, but it was him, Crawford, and Cordell or Cordial. So the three of them almost, it was not a photo finish, but the three of them came, like next to each other up to the finish line. And then Hauger just snatched it away. He was not necessarily in my purview for it, or like I didn't think he would make it. But what an exciting, I mean, from the beginning to the end, so much excitement, so much overtaking. I mean, I couldn't have guessed that. Yeah, as I said, that Fittipaldi would have won.
Yeah, I mean, in his jump to the first place, everyone was very surprised by it because he jumped from 4th to 1. He overtook 2 guys in 1 corner, and then he was like goodbye, and he just took off.
Yeah, and he did have quite a little bit of a lead at the end.
Almost 8 seconds.
Yeah,
I think,
he made up a bunch of time. So I mean, highly recommend it. You'll also be able to watch it on F1 TV. It's so much fun to watch. It's only about an hour long, so it's a little bit shorter than, I mean, a lot shorter than an actual F1 race.
So it's very easy to watch.
Yeah, but there's so much. I mean, you can't have it on just on the side. It's like there's so much that happens. I mean, there was also going immediately into F1 Academy, we watched the second race of the weekend, and it's even a shorter race, so it's not even,
they did 13 laps. I think this also comes down to it being a very long track. So I think tracks that are a little shorter, they will do more laps. But yeah, they did 13 laps. We had like multiple safety cars also. Also to keep in mind, F1 Academy, they all race just like in Formula 4 in the same cars.
Also Formula 2 does as well. It's all the same cars.
Oh, okay, yes. So all the same cars. It's also very interesting in F1 Academy, you have a Puma car.
Yeah, I mean, the sponsors are really interesting. Like, yes, of course, we know that 10 of the drivers are sponsored by an F1 team, but then you have, Puma, you have Charlotte Tilbury, the makeup company, sponsoring another car. So it's really cool to see the different types of sponsors. I also love seeing this year, finally, they're getting more media attention. They're a lot more involved in F1 TV. I mean, it's on F1 TV. It's on the socials. It's on YouTube, and it's like also like post-race interviews. The 2 of the women were there, so it's like really nice to see that there's some attention finally happening.
Also, people were hating on the F1 intro. The F1 Academy intro is lit.
Oh, it's
much better. So much better. They were like, okay, I think maybe they're like, okay, we'll do F1 Academy, stuff like that. And then they're like, oh my God, F1 starts next week. We need to do the other one too. They just forgot about it because like it's not very good.
Oh no, the F1 Academy intro is so fun because it shows them like serious, but then also shows some personality. And it's really nice. I really enjoy it.
Yes, it is. And it's also like, once again, really exciting racing because it's a lot of overtaking, lots and lots of back and forth. And we had Doriane
Pin?
Doriane Pin?
I think Pin.
Pin.
That's what they've been saying. Yeah.
So she's the driver technically for the Mercedes team.
Yeah. So
Prima
Racing. Yeah.
Exactly. And so she won the first race, and she also won the second race.
Technically, yes.
But then Mercedes did something incredibly bizarre.
Prima
Racing, right?
Yeah.
Did something incredibly bizarre, and you knew what was happening. I didn't know what was happening, so I watched it, and then so essentially, Doriane makes it through the checkered line, but her racing engineer never told her that the race was over, and I don't think he communicated to her either that she was on the last lap. So she went full out for another almost 2 laps before she was shown the red flag, and then she ended up getting a penalized 20-second penalty, and so she ended up coming 9th.
It's so frustrating.
And I get that people will say like, oh, why didn't she see the checkered flag and stuff like that, but I can tell you from someone who races on iRacing, right? And of course, like, we're nowhere near the same level. She's a professional racer and stuff like that. But I'm just focused on the track, right? Yeah. And I'm not even in a real car, right? I'm just focused on that. And then if you don't have someone communicating to you, because in iRacing, you have someone telling me, oh, you're on the last lap, you've been shown the white flag, and now you're checkered flag, good job, blah, 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 blah. She might have been so focused, and then that they went and everyone in the pits celebrated with each other, but they didn't celebrate with the person who actually got the one. Yeah. For the team. Absolutely mind-boggling. Also incredibly frustrating for what a stupid mistake.
I know, seriously. I really don't blame her at all. I feel like even some of the F1 drivers who were asked about it at the end, they even said like, you don't pay attention to it. You have your head down, you focus, especially on a track like Jeddah, which is so intricate. And then, I mean, also when you see the flag waved, it was quite up. It was not like down in the viewpoint, and you know they're so low.
Yes.
So, and I'm like, I also, like, some people even said, like, she shouldn't have gotten a penalty. The team should have gotten a fine because it was, I feel like, more their mistake than it was hers.
And she's also a very experienced racer.
Yeah.
So, like, she has won the Ferrari Challenge Europe. She's won a race in Formula 4 UAE. So she has had success in other sports. So she's an experienced racer.
Yeah.
So I like the only way this could have happened is that no one communicated to her that she was on the last lap and then that the race was over. She was probably in the zone because she was dominant. She at no point was there really I was ever afraid that she wasn't going to bring it home.
No, there was 3 safety cars that she had to restart the race on. And I mean, that's also quite a task. And she did all of it well. The last safety car was quite towards the end, but she still didn't know how many laps. Her goal was, of course, to pull away from Pulling, who was right behind her. I mean, she ended up leading with more of 3 seconds of a gap at the end.
Yeah, I think she won by 2 seconds, technically.
Okay, yeah, but I mean, still, so she ended up pulling away a little bit. But I mean, her focus is, of course, to drive a clean race, a fast race, to
stay away from everyone.
Yeah, and win, which she technically did.
Yeah.
But her, it's just so frustrating. I hope they kind of get their things in order, but it's just so frustrating that they celebrated amongst each other and nobody congratulated her. Like, usually on F1 or even F2 or F3, like, 4, like, you're like, oh, congratulations, P1, you won, whatever.
Yeah.
But
it's usually the first communication is between your race engineer and the driver being like, hey, congratulations. But once again, like, we didn't hear anything and it didn't seem like there was any communication from her. She didn't know in which lap she was.
Yes.
And with the like safety cars and stuff like that, I'm sure you're not keeping track of it.
No.
You're not going to be counting in your head how many like races have I completed. You know?
No, it's absolutely... I mean, it's a bummer. There's still a lot more races, of course, to come for them. So hopefully it will go, they'll learn their lesson from this time and do better next time round. So we'll see. But it was definitely super interesting. Highly recommend watching an F1 Academy race as well. It's also, again, even shorter than an F2 race. But there's so much that happens. I mean, there's lots of action. They're really close together as well. I mean, it's highly competitive. So, I mean, definitely don't miss out on it. It's so much fun to watch.
Yeah, especially if you're a little bummed out about Formula 1 and you have F1 TV app, it's a no-brainer to me. Like, check out F1, check out F2, F3, F1 Academy. It's all incredibly fun racing. It is like, it's highly competitive. Like, sometimes I'm like, they're so willing to risk it. They're like, I'm gonna go for this. They're so hungry. In F2, in F3, I mean, F3 we didn't see, but I'm assuming, right? And then F1 Academy, they're so hungry. They're so willing to go for it.
And they're all just also such incredible professionals.
Yeah.
Like, they're all very much athletes. They're all professional racers. They've had a long career.
Yeah.
I don't know, I felt like impressed on the radio how professionally they communicate. I remember at the beginning for the F1 Academy race, we heard one of the women over the radio, one of the Charlotte Tilbury sponsored driver, and she was like super excited, and then her engineer had to be like, hey, let's focus on the race. Let's
but she was like, I'm gonna get him. I actually didn't understand what she was saying.
I don't know, but she sounded like super excited, which I also get. Like, it's your second race, F1 Academy, in front of an F1 crowd, you know, on a big major track. So like, of course, be excited. And I also love seeing the excitement and the passion and
absolutely
all of that.
And it will be even more exciting to see where we will see those racers in other categories, because we will see a lot of Doriane this year.
Oh, yeah.
She's in so many other. We'll see her with the Iron Dames.
Yes.
So
endurance races.
Dames, exactly. So I'm just really excited. Also, the same thing with the F2 guys. We've seen Taylor Bernard in other. We saw him in Formula 4 UAE. So it's just really exciting to see these talented young people doing what they're, I guess, born to be doing. doing, you know?
And
So
it's
really
also,
awesome.
yeah, it's also really curious, or I'm excited to see also just where their career goes. Now that we've been introduced to so many of them, like unfortunately, of course, not everybody will end up in F1, but I'm sure many of them will be or continue to be very successful race car drivers. Maybe we'll see them in different categories, which happens quite often, of course. So I'm really excited to see what's going to happen to all of them.